Tom, I'm so excited to have you on the show with us today. And just so everybody is watching, this is a pre recording, as I told you earlier. So I'm just so grateful. Tom is one of those men that is in such demand that we had to squeeze him in his busy schedule. And he was just grateful, or I'm grateful, that he was gracious enough to take some time to help all of us and learning the truth and what we need to do to get from one level to the next. Tom, I love and adore you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Your words are so kind. Thank you very much. I'm glad that we could figure out how to schedule this, and I'm glad to be able to contribute what I can. Right. So
Yeah.
grateful to be here.
Well, you are one of those masters of industry that you have. Boy, you built things from nothing to magnificent. Would you be willing to share a little bit of some of the things that you have done and
Yeah.
then some of the
Sure.
journey along the way?
Sure. Early on in my career, I was maybe 22, 23. I had a chance to be one of those sales managers, the door to door. We didn't go door to door, but we worked by referral. The Cutco cutlery sales manager, right? And my job at that point was to recruit and train sales reps. And it was one of those high adrenaline, lots of fun, lots of energy. Hope you make some money, and some people made really good money relative to the day. This is, gosh, 1991. Something like that. And I had this experience that I'd never had before. I'd been in the door-to-door sales game for a little while and got pretty good at that and used my cute little boyish looks and my charm. That those days are gone, but
You still have those.
but the reality was I literally placed an ad. This is pre-internet. I put an ad in the newspaper. Cost like $150 for a week, which I thought was so much money. I was like, man, that's half of what a job would be back then for a summer college student. And next thing you know, there's a couple hundred people in my office applying for a job. I taught them how to sell, and I did this week in, week out through this entire summer. And I made tremendous amount of money again for the time. And I thought that was really fun. And the power of advertising just got my attention, and I got to build something from scratch, right? So the loneliest moment of my life, my business life, was I had committed in this particular summer, I rented an office, I bought furniture, right? I cut off all opportunities to take another job, and I was going to work 80 or 90 hours a week to make this happen, because there's this dream of me being a blue collar boy in college, not sure what I was going to get a degree in, not sure if that was going to pay off, getting attracted to sales, going, wow, this looks fun. And yet there was a point. The new thing at the time was voicemail, office voicemail. So I had a phone in the office, but the phone didn't ring. We were sending calls straight to a pre-recorded voicemail, right? Saying, hey, here's when you show up to the office to apply for this job. And this is old school dinosaur stuff. But the reality is, at about 9 o'clock in the morning, I had gone out and done a bunch of flyering to get people to kind of come into the office. We did all the guerrilla marketing stuff, right? All the street stuff that you can think of. And so at 9 o'clock, I'm in my shirt and tie. I'm ready for people to come in, but nobody comes until about 1 o'clock. Well, from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock was absolute silence, and every thought in my life of, this is going to be awesome, I'm working my butt off, this is the opportunity for me to, oh my gosh, I committed more money to this enterprise than I actually need to get through college next year. Why didn't I just save the money? What am I doing? What, right? Every danger, every just crazy fear went through my brain, right? And at 1 o'clock, a couple minutes before somebody came in, by 1:30, there were 30 some odd people in the office, and I was backed up. I couldn't get to everybody. They were all waiting, and I was like, oh, we did it. And the thrill of that for me has just stayed. And so anytime throughout my career, the opportunity to build something, going and riding that roller coaster is just such a thrill. And I've trained myself. I still don't get over the butterflies. I still have the anxiety. I still have all those crazy thoughts of, what am I doing? What if this doesn't work? And yet know the answer. It's like, just be patient, just keep going. You wouldn't have started if you didn't think you could, right? And so that pattern's just gone through the rest of my career. And so a buddy of mine started a coaching call center back in the mid 90s. He'd worked for some seminar companies, called because we were college buddies, and he's like, hey, I know you've been in sales, and if I can do it, you can do it. And I was like, well, yeah, if you can do it, I can do it better. Just that friendly competition kind of a thing. And started when there were under 30 people. We did a really good job for clients. We learned a ton along the way. Over a 14-year period while I was with the company, I was the coaching director, built the coaching programs, became vice president of business development and product development. And we just had this crazy growth thing going on for a long time. And every year, the thing that most people don't realize about starting a business is, so many times you're like, oh man, we could go out of business. And a lot of time it doesn't happen, but the thought comes up, right? And you talk yourself out of that thought. And 12 years later, 10 years later, we had 600 employees. We had 4 divisions. We were in 3 or 4 states, right? We had the number 1 infomercial on TV because we bought and built an infomercial division. We didn't know anything about TV when we started. We didn't know anything about anything when we started, except for we knew how to call and sell coaching, right? And every growth period, we just expanded to the next logical thing. And we did the next logical thing. And then, we were committed to being good at it. We were committed to doing a good job for our clients. We always paid on time, right? We did all of the little things that made a difference. And then we would expand our sphere. And then we got to the point where it was like, hey, we actually need to buy companies. And we started buying companies. And that was a whole rigmarole. And I got to be the guy, the good fortune for me. And I worked my butt off and I learned a lot, and I think I'm smart. And I think we all were, but every time we did something new, it was that new starting over thing, right? It's like what Dan Sullivan talks about with, you have to have courage to go beyond your bounds. Otherwise you can't succeed. You have to have the courage to go beyond your bounds, and you just keep going. You're like, oh man. And we lost a few times, right? We got just done, and it was like, oh, that didn't work, but it didn't blow up our company. It just blew up the next thing, right? And you just shift and you learn. And it was this really wild, fun, intense ride of just the roller coaster of just so much fun. And I got to be the guy who would jump in when we would buy a company. I got to be the guy that when we would get a new partner who would send us leads, I got to work with them on doing all of the integration marketing and all of the coaching curriculums and all of the scripting. And I worked with our sales teams. I worked with the outside advertisers. And so I became the guy who, in the call center world, I became the guy who was the internet and direct marketing guy, right? Because I knew all the marketing people. And to all the marketing people, I was the call center guy, right? So I was this toll booth guy, and I just got to just learn by experience from so many world-class people that we would partner with, or we would get advice from, or we would contract with, or we would buy their company. And I couldn't have scripted it better myself. So that was my ride. We built, like I said, coaching curriculum. I built product. We worked with fulfillment centers. We built our own fulfillment center, right? Everything we did, we contracted with, learned from, and then we would bring it in-house. I hired and fired hundreds of people, right? And so it just became this fun thing. And then we discovered the mastermind world, and we would go to masterminds, and we would go to seminars, and people would come up and go, you're so amazing. And we're like, we just work hard.
I have to stop you on mastermind.
Does that make
It
sense? Because
yeah, it shocks me. Literally shocks me how many people I'm running into when I say mastermind. They're like, what's that? And
yeah.
it's like, it's a mastermind. And you and I grew up with understanding that. How
Yeah.
would you explain a mastermind to somebody who's never
Well,
heard the concept?
so the original mastermind comes from Think and Grow Rich,
Right.
which I read as a sales manager. My manager, Steve Weber, said, you have to read Think and Grow Rich. And we literally spent 3 weekends with our sales management team, the Western zone, if you will, from Utah to Vegas to California, getting together, and we went through the chapters as a group. of Think and Grow Rich, which was invaluable. It's better than a college class, right? So, but one of the chapters of being successful and being able to build riches in your life, which is financially, but also in every other way of your life, is to build a personal mastermind, right? And that concept is where you can't do it. You can do as much as you can by yourself, but if you want to conquer the world, you can't conquer the world by yourself, right?
Right.
And so the idea is whatever area of life you want to work in, there are people who you have some value to them because of who you are, and they offer some value to you because of who they are. And there's a synergy created there. Stephen Covey talks about synergies 1+1=7, right? That just expands your mind, it expands your capabilities, it expands your resources, and it back another old school term, it builds your Rolodex, right? It builds your
Right.
contact list of who you can call on and who you can help. And honestly, my career's made on working hard and just networking with people who, hey, we call, can you help? How many times have you taken somebody to lunch? The easiest way is go, hey, can I take you to lunch and ask you some questions? I'm interested in this. And my son just got done with his freshman year of college, and we explained this to him and said, you're going to a school where there's a lot of dads who are successful. So you have our experience, but if you want to really learn the world, go ask some of those guys if you can take them to lunch or buy them a milkshake or whatever. And he was surprised. He was a little fearful. Man, I'm giving the long answer to all these, but he
I
was
love
kind of
it.
like intimidated by, because like, I'm going to ask somebody's dad. Well, the first time he did it, the dad was like, yeah, sure. And was so pleased that my son would ask, right? That they share all this information about their career, things they learned, things they've gone over. And I learned it again from somebody who said, hey, if you want to pursue a career or pursue any ambition, you can learn everything you need to know by taking people to lunch. Business people love that. So masterminds today, now there's all these organized where you actually can pay to be part of a membership. You can pick the topic you want to learn. You can pick the type of business you want to learn. And because everybody's paying, they're very committed to offering value, to gaining value, and it's significantly speeds up your process, right? The idea of you, whatever would take you a year or 5 or 10 to do on your own, you can sometimes accomplish in months by being a part of a mastermind, right?
And I love that. And you brought up the point about the fear of asking someone to lunch or asking them for
Oh yeah.
information. And, I'm going to be honest with you, Don. You and I met at a lunch that somebody else invited me to just so I could meet you.
Oh,
And then I asked you shakingly, I waited months to call and say, can we take you to lunch? Because it's like, oh man, here's this 7, 8 figure dude, and here I am not there yet. And he's just this master of industry, and I'm not there yet. And finally we did it. And I'll tell you what, I have to say, and I've said it to you many times, I just love you. Probably you're one of my top 5 people in the world that I love, and you are so genuine and so
wow.
kind.
Thank you.
And I look back at the fear I had of asking you to lunch to pick your brain,
Yeah.
and it was like, now there may be 1 or 2 people that go, I'm not going to help you, but you wouldn't want them to help you anyway. But most people that are in positions like you really are open to abundance for the world. And let me, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, I'll eat with you and share a few ideas.
Yeah.
And you're an awesome dude, and thank you so much. And I'm so glad I got over that fear. So the rest of you get over your freaking.
I am too. I'm glad I didn't know any of those things. It just seemed like we were in the mastermind together. We were friends and we lived in the same area, and very natural for someone to call and go, hey, let's go to lunch.
Yeah, well, and you are now a very dear friend, and I adore you.
Well,
So,
thank you.
but
Thank
it,
you.
no, it really was. You were out of my reach in my mind, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a big part of this show is that a lot of people get stuck in their mind, and it keeps them from going. Had you believed you weren't a good salesperson, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, one of the cool experiences I had, I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, right? And I
hmm
was not necessarily dirt poor, but we didn't have money. We were a blue collar family, and I could go down to the strip this was a long time ago when the Strip was a friendlier place. And as a teenager, that's where we would go, is hang out at the Strip, right? Because it was Las Vegas. And
That's back
I,
when the flamingo was new.
yeah, well, not that new, but I would sit here and just watch these people, and I know that they were coming to gamble, and I knew, people who worked in the high end restaurants, and they were always packed, and I was like, who are these people? Where do they come from? Where do they get all this money, right? And besides the side of it, it was like, what these people tick, and always just ticked inside of me. And so as I got around really successful people, I knew that was an opportunity, and I knew to pay attention, to listen to what they say, listen to how they do things. Right. And over the years, there's just been this, it's to me how many opportunities just kind of fell into my lap because I was in the room. Right. And there was a factor to it. And yeah, I was the one always thinking I was receiving and learning. And so I've always tried to take that position of, gosh, what would I do if I were in a position to help, right? As opposed to be the climbing the ladder, if you will. And I noticed that, money was the game, right, for people, but the business was the bigger game, and it was more of winning at the business. And, there were people that were just scorched earth, just crickets, just awful, disgusting people. And then but the majority of them were very generous, very casual. I mean, look at me here, right? I don't know.
You don't look like a mom.
I really
Yes,
took,
you do.
a liking to just the people that were cool, right? And
Yeah.
the earth. And there's so many more cool, down to earth people who've had success and who can help people and are willing to help people. And regardless of what they do. And I prefer, as to be behind the scenes. And most of the business we do is behind the scenes, and I don't really coach anymore, and by choice. But I spend a lot of time, most of my time socially, right, is networking with my business friends, who are more friends than business. But when you need something, you can call, and when they need something, they call. And it's a really enjoyable. I had no idea that life could be this cool, to be honest with you. I it would be, I was going to work hard, and I was going to be the man, and I was going to, I had all these ambitious, aspirational things. But, I had no idea that you could go skiing with somebody, and you have a real estate coaching group, and go, hey, we want to refer people over to your mortgages. And, it nets everybody an extra couple $1 million a year in revenue, kind of a thing, right? Like, that was deal making, and it was so easy and so casual, but it was because you'd invested for time, right? And kind of the Warren Buffett that, you don't expect, you just invest for life.
Yeah.
You invest for life.
I
So
like that.
are we getting to the topic that you want? I mean, these are all
Oh,
conceptual character kind of building
no,
things. But it's like,
these are helping. It's helping me, and I know it's helping our audience,
yeah,
because some of them are just like, okay, I'm stuck. And then there are a few that haven't even started yet, and they're like, is it even possible? And you've hit on all of those things, and some of the things they need to do, like the masterminds and just being friends and going to lunch and going skiing. So now you've covered a lot of great stuff already.
you don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to, be super intelligent. You just have to you have to believe the opportunity is available, and you just go chase it. And at some point you start to enjoy the chase, right?
Yeah.
And interesting, because that's when you stop pressing, and that's when sales and money starts to flow. And I can tell you, we've had this conversation with friends a gazillion times, that you can do mechanically the same exact thing 100 times over, and you just don't know which one's going to be the hit. But if you do it 100 times over, it's going to be a hit, right?
Yeah.
If you're working on your offer and you go pitch your friends, and you pitch people just for the practice of pitching them, not because you expect them to buy. But at some point they'll tell you, they go, ooh, how do I get that? And then you have something you can sell, right?
Right.
I mean, that's how we used to do it with an offer. It was like, hey, I'm going to go pitch. I have a friend who sold a couple of businesses. He's made millions of dollars. And his formula is, when he gets an idea, he literally goes knocking on doors of small business people and pitches them. He's like, I'm going to go pitch 100 business owners on this and see if it flies. Well, the reality is he tweaks it on the fly 100 times, and And if it gets exciting, he turns it into a business, right? He's done it 3 times.
What a great
That's
idea.
that's the beginner formula. Anybody can do that for free, right? You
Right.
learn selling, you learn how to overcome objections, right? You should hear what it really takes. And it's whether it's digital or not, it's there's the 100 lead theory, the 100 click theory, the 100 knock on doors theory. We apply that to everything that we do because it's just easy and simple and it gives you a result, right? Like that's to me of how you just move it along. Right? We had a coaching sales opportunity. We said, hey, everybody's asking for this. Let's refer them to this company and see what happens. Let's refer 100 people. Okay, what happened after 100 people? Well, didn't go so great. Okay, kill it. Whatever. There's no emotion. It's curiosity of let's see what happens. It's like ants in the microscope, the glass, right? Hey, let's see what happens. Let's see if I can burn it. Well, I can burn that. What else can I burn? Right? It's just if you can get into the joy of experimenting in that, you get less emotional about, oh, did I get a paycheck or not? Because at some point, if you're starting out, I'll say this, if you're starting out, keep whatever money flow you have going, if that's a job or whatever, and work outside of that to keep the money flow going, and don't leave one business for the next. If you've had your first success, right? Build the machine. I do want to talk about this. Build the machine and then do what it takes to keep the machine building so you can build the next machine, right? And pretty soon, either you've built one gigantic machine that's awesome and you've added stuff to it, or you've built a couple, right, that are cash flowing for you. It's all personality. It's all business model. It's all, those kinds of things. But I had the conversation, as an entrepreneur, one of the things where people get stuck, particularly kind of in that first 100,000, first million, in revenue, is Henry Ford built his first car by himself with some tools in his garage, right?
Yeah.
Well, after he became a success, he wasn't building the cars anymore. He had a team, he had an assembly line, right? Well, what did Henry do? Every day made sure the assembly line was equipped to keep working, right? The workers showed up, they had the tools, they had the resources. So what you do changes. And a lot of times entrepreneurs get stuck because they want to keep doing the thing that got them there. And a lot of times they'll destroy the machine they built because they've got to stay hands-on, or they ignore the thing they built and it dies because they're building the next thing by hand, right?
Mhm.
Well, the reality is once you build the machine, the crazy thing about entrepreneurs is you start getting anxiety going, what am I going to do now? Because I have this energy. I want to build stuff. I want to do things. Well, number one, make sure that you have people who are going to keep the current machine going and systems and resources for them. And your job is to provide them resources so they can do their jobs, right? So you don't just let it go and go off to Hawaii. You can be in Hawaii but be on with them. Hey, what do you need? Do you have everything going? Right? Learn the EOS system of, how to do a stand-up meeting and those kind of things. And you start to feel this guilt over it if you're one of those people like me where you're like, hey, am I working hard enough for this? Well, yeah, you built the damn thing. It is yours. You own it now. It's like a water fountain. You push the button and water comes out because you built the machine. You deserve that success, right? But your effort now needs to go into keeping it going.
Right.
You want to
Well, and
build to it or build the next thing, right? Build it with the intent to build the and those things.
one of the things I teach in my executive retreats and coaching is the very best leaders in industry, the very best leaders in corporate, are those who can be gone for a week and nobody knows but their direct team, because they have taught everyone how to do everything and they can walk away and it can run smoothly.
Yeah.
And so it's right along what you said. You got to teach them how to do it and watch them and do the systems and do the
Yeah.
processes. And then if you walk away for a day or two, a week, a month, your team is still functioning and the rest of the world doesn't come to a screaming halt because Tom is not there on
Yeah.
site.
Yeah. Don't let it go more than 2 days without, I always do a check-in, even if it's a, hey, what's
Oh,
up,
yeah.
man? Right. But
Well, you do want
even
some
if I'm like,
check-ins, but
but the reality is what you're saying is in theory, you should be able to just let it run and be able to give input. And, the bigger your organization gets, obviously the further you get. But
right.
it's those pods. Again, it's an old book reference, but it's the greatest thing of the E-Myth revisited. You build something that can sustain itself. and then you just provided the resources. So the work is done by the machine, not as much you, right?
Right. Well, now I've got a client, bless their sweetheart, and this is why I'm working with them. But they, for 6 years running, ended at $994,000 and just couldn't make it that extra 6,000 to go over into the million. What would be your advice to somebody that has done that for 6 freaking years?
Most of the time, my experience is they're so focused on money for themselves and as much of just go all in on the business and get committed to making the business right and do the right things. Um, that's how you blow the doors off, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're, we all do this. We've all, when we first set the goal, we were like, there was a number. Gosh, when I was in college, if I can make $10,000 in a summer, that'd be awesome. If I can make 70,000 a year, that'd be awesome. And then you find out that none of that's a lot of money, right? And then you go, if I can make this, or if I can have this, if I can, and those are cool goals, but in reality, they are the limiting goals because they put a cap on your ability, right? You hear about guys like Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Dean was one of our clients for years and years and years. And, without Dean, none of the magic happens because he's the magic guy. But
Right.
those guys have unlimited capacity for success, right? Now we'll just share the subtlety that they also had to learn how to deal with that and how to allow that to happen, right? And to align themselves so that could happen, because everybody hits the ceiling and then you bounce back but the truth is, if you're so focused just on the one thing, that one thing is going to rule you and be your limiting factor.
Yeah.
Right. So more of, well, gosh, let go of that. What's the bigger goal? What's the bigger ambition? And when you set a money goal for yourself, I think it's motivating initially, but it takes really, you wouldn't take if you were just all in on making the business the biggest it could possibly be.
Well,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
know this from personal experience. In fact, you've witnessed me in that state from a time or two,
Yeah.
that money's tight. And so you become focused on it. And what happens is that you get into a state of
Yeah. Yeah.
what's the word? Instead of abundance, you're all like scarcity. You're in a
Yeah.
state of, oh my gosh, oh
You're all
my
bound up
gosh.
and paralyzed by
And,
it.
and
Yep.
when you're bound up and paralyzed, nobody wants to deal with you because they can feel that. And this, in
Yeah.
my opinion, there is a sense of distrust that is expelled because, or it just spews over because people feel that you're so concerned about the dollar that you're not necessarily concerned about them
Yeah.
or the business or the best
Well, because
process.
you're not trusting yourself when you're in paralysis, right?
Yeah,
Fear is overriding, and fear and trust don't exist together, right?
right.
And I say this, one of the things that you hear from a success, someone who is success, and they're talking to a successful person, and you hear it all the time. They're like, well, of course you're successful. You have all the money in the world. And you go, well, not necessarily, right? Every significant piece of growth in business I've been in, it's either because you've invested for years in preparing yourself or invested for a long time to in a position for something to happen, that in hindsight, you look at all of the time, energy, and money you spent on it, and
Right.
those are sunk costs, right? Because maybe you have something that can fund it, but it's not conscious. Or, and in most cases, you constantly have to say, okay, we're going to either set aside this kind of money in this project. It might not be profitable for a few months, right? It might not be profitable for a year. It might, when we added seminars to our call center coaching business, they invested money for 9 months with like significant losses for 9 months. And most entrepreneurs that I see under the million mark who are doing well, right, making hundreds of $1,000s, that the beginner entrepreneurs like, I want to be that. But this person's going, okay, how do I grow to the next level? It's, well, you have to invest and take those kinds of investments and calculate what it's going to take to get you there. And a lot of times it's investing yourself and committing yourself to making it happen. And dollars and cents you be aware of, and or like, hey, here's just how we invest to grow. And you always peel off X% of the amount of money you make for investment, and you don't take it out of the business. You're not putting it into something that's a current day ROI. It's a, hey, we're putting 10% or we're putting 20% over here out of the way. That's a really hard thing for a new entrepreneur to learn, or someone who's done it themselves up to that point,
Yeah.
right?
What are some of the things people can do to invest in themselves?
Man, education's number one. There's a ladder. Read everything you can for free. Figure out who to trust. Who do you want to be like, right? Watch those things. Read books to get the formats. Watch YouTube videos, and then go, okay, here's the thing that I want to be good at. Ed O'Keefe, a buddy of mine, he had a 90-day learning platform for himself. And he said, anything I want to learn, if I deep dive into it, I can become really good at it in 90 days. Right. And everything I need to know about it so I can hire the right people. Right.
Right.
Well, that's 4 major skills a year for him. And he does this constantly. Right. Well, if you had one major skill that you don't have right now that you had in 90 days from now, what would that be? And I don't care where you are. I don't care who you are. If you can commit and just dive in 90 days, you can have a new world-class level ability or understanding or skill at something, right?
Right.
You want to be good at Facebook ads, you can do it. If you want to be good at making memes for organic social, if you want to learn how to do an offer, if you want to, all the mechanical pieces. And the nice thing is as you go along the way, you find the people that you need to talk to, and some will talk to you and some won't, like we talked about. But those who will share more than you need to know. And so it's take people to lunch, buy them a virtual lunch, right? Send them a Starbucks card and go, hey, can I buy you a Starbucks card? And just, I will. Well, and that's what I would say is there are a number of people who, because they're in the information marketing business, they sell that information. So they're not as likely to say, yeah, you can pick my brain. But those people do have Facebook groups where they download their information and other people are sharing, right? And that kind of thing. And who don't have, they're not selling that information. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to right? Go to a local CFO, right? And go, hey, I'm just starting out. What would I pay attention to with keeping track of cash flow? How do I do a cash flow cycle, right? How do I understand that, right? And does that answer the question?
Yeah. Well, at what point does things like mastermind and coaching come in, and at what point is it no longer necessary?
It's never no longer necessary. Why would you stop? It's
I
format,
wouldn't,
right?
but there
The
are people
format.
that say I don't need it anymore. I've arrived, and so that's why I'm asking because I know the answer.
We're we all have a comfort zone, right, of where we
Yeah.
want to get to, and so sometimes I would confess that it would be easier to be comfortable at a station because I'm not that guy, and it drives me nuts. But it's also the thing that spurs me on.
Yeah.
And where I get all the reward in life. So it's like, hey, what's right? What do I care about that's next? And it's been fun because I was thinking about it this morning of, what do I need to do, in 2021? What's going to go? What are the things? And sometimes I have a friend who does a real estate investment mastermind, right? And he services dentists and people who are successful entrepreneurs. And sometimes it's not doing more of the same thing. It's let your machine go and go and learn how to invest your money. Sometimes it's, what, our team is weak at X and we need to go deep dive into speaking, for example, right? We have a mutual friend, Tom, who awesome corporate sales guy, makes a ton of money, does really well. And he wanted to learn how to speak to sell, right? Well, he came in, the industry crossover was not that much, but he picked up some nuggets that helps him sell a lot more and use that model to sell his corporate stuff. Gave him an advantage in the corporate space. So if you're just trying to figure it out, join an entrepreneur growth mastermind. Get in there with a bunch of people who are not like you, but are like-minded you. If everybody's the same, you don't get anything out of it. If you're the smartest one in the room, you don't get anything out of it, right? I struggled for years coming out of the call center world because people treat me like the emperor with no clothes, right? And they go, "Oh, you're so great, you've achieved all this money." And I go, I know the things I know, but I don't know the things I don't know. Don't tell
Right.
me I'm great. Let me share my weakness with you, and you help me with my weakness. It took me 3 or 4 masterminds to get to that point to where I could let my ego go and be humble enough to admit that that's what I wanted out of a mastermind, not just people to go, "Oh, Tom, I love you, Tom. You're great." I
Yeah.
love that. Everybody loves appreciation and that, but when that became the only thing I got,
Right.
I had to start pushing harder and go, okay, I need to push myself to find, these
Yeah.
right.
I had this beautiful young lady I had invited to join us for a mastermind group. And she just hem and hawed, and she came in, and you could see the discomfort because she just felt like, oh, everybody's so far beyond me. I don't belong. Here are these successful people.
Yeah.
All I do is this, and I'm still in corporate. I'm not really an entrepreneur. But when all was said and done, she had more ideas, more tips, more tools
Yeah.
than everybody else there. Everybody went away with a nugget from her. And she went, wow, I didn't realize I had so much to share. Now,
Yeah.
she got nuggets too, but I think sometimes the best lessons we learn are from our 6-year-olds. And I always say, you find a coach until you outgrow them. And then when you outgrow them, you find another coach and then another. And there are people who have been my coaches that I've turned around and coached, or
Yeah.
that I've coached who has turned around and been my
Yeah.
because we're experts or good at different areas.
Yeah. No, years and years ago, I had a sales manager. I asked him, I said, what was the secret to your success of growing your sales organization, right? He developed more sales managers than anybody else. And he goes, the guy that I learned from told me this, right, is what he said. He goes, my mentor told me that your opportunity to grow comes when you can develop someone to be as good or better than yourself,
Yep.
right? And if they can out achieve you, ironically, it doesn't sound like it, right? But counterintuitive is what I'm trying to say. But that's what creates more opportunity for you, especially if you're in info marketing or coaching or giving, right? It's you
Right.
want people to be as good or better than you and to out achieve you. And a lot of people live with that fear, right? Their ego or their fear of credibility. They realize that that's actually the opportunity.
Yeah, and
Right?
I
Let's
think
grade people. I see
yeah,
Dean Graziosi all the time. I did not make Dean Graziosi, and Dean would say, yeah, hell no. But I was part of the team that we provided structure to Dean so Dean could be at his best, and we all benefited together. And all the tide rose all boats, right? So that was huge, 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 huge.
yeah, I the most successful people are people who want others to succeed instead of saying, I only want you to be just almost as good as me, but I don't want you to be better. And I think the most successful people want you to be as good or better, and especially better in some areas,
Yeah.
because none of us are perfect at everything. And if we were, oh,
Oh,
wouldn't it be a lonely, boring world?
well, because that's who your friends become, right?
Yeah.
Right. You become friends with the people who, you know, are attracted to
Yep.
the same things. Like attracts like, and success breeds success. And it doesn't end. You just keep going, and that's the fun of it all. So
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you for days and days and hours, and I have. Um,
yes.
it's time to go ahead and wrap this up. What one piece of advice would you leave for people who have been stuck or haven't started, or really, I think having been stuck and they just need to go to that next level?
So everything we talked about is overcoming. You're going to hit a limit, and you just need to think differently, right? Typically, the thing that gets you there. So there's a book that I love called Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson, right?
Yeah.
And the one core principle that kind of goes side by side along with everything we talked about today and or is a critical ingredient is that the number one thing from 0 to 1 million you need to focus on is getting really good at selling, getting your offer so that it's really good, really irresistible, right? And testing it on as many people as you can and continually tweaking it. It's never good enough. It always will change. But if that's on your top 5 list every day of make my offer better, make it more attractive, make it more easier for people to just automatically buy, right? That piece, along with all of the mindset that we talked about, those two together, you conquer the world.
Awesome. Tom, as always, it's been wonderful being with you and talking with you. I love you. Mwah.
Love you too.
And
Thank you,
thank
Karen.
you for taking the time out of your busy to be with us today.
It's my pleasure. I've to make this happen for a long time, and I'm glad we got together. It's good to see you. You're looking great. So
Oh, thank you. All right.
thank you so much. And
Well,
let me know. Let's do an open Q&A at some point, or whatever. Let's do a follow up to this. I'd love to.
oh,
So
that'd be wonderful.
okay.
Hey, thanks, Tom.
Hey, thank you.